Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli back out in the shop, and I've got an amazing video for you today. And in today's shop, we're talking about a brand new bait that is changing the way we're gonna fish for fish that are off the bank, fish that are suspended, fish that you're seeing on your forward-facing sonar. We've got a bait for you that's gonna change the way you fish for those fish. I always get excited in these videos when the bait I'm talking about is not only a brand new lure, but it's a brand new technique. And in today's shop, this brand new, hot off the presses lure is the Crudge by Berkley. The Crudge by Berkley. All right, take a look, and as you're looking, I want you to think about what Krej means. Krej is jerk spelled backwards. Krej is jerk spelled backwards. And that's a great name for a bait that when you look at it, it's sort of like a backwards jerk bait. It's got a jerk bait profile, jerk bait silhouette, but instead of that bill facing down, it's got that very strange, odd-looking, backwards, reverse-facing lip, up-facing lip. What a cool-looking bait, but let me tell you that this thing is special because it does a lot of stuff that you can't do with a regular jerkbait, all right? So some similarities there in profile and body shape, but that bill and the way this bait is built, it's a lot different than a traditional suspending jerkbait, okay? All right, let's get into this bait. I want to start with the body, and really I want to show you how this bait is weighted, because that's really the key to this bait. Let me see, is this one more? This one might be a little more translucent. Let me see if I can show you this one. This bait has a really unique weighting system on it. And if you look at that way that it splits that belly hook hanger, you're going to see two weights. One in the front toward the head, one in the back toward the tail, and it's kind of split by that middle hook hanger. That weighting system on this Krej is really the magic to how this bait acts in the water. Okay, so very unique weighting system. And then of course, let's go back and look at that reverse bill. Super unique bill design with a bill that goes up and not down. The other thing I want you to notice about this bill before I start talking to you about what this bait does is that notice the line tie on the Krej is not on the nose of the bait like a traditional jerkbait, right? Traditional jerkbait, that line tie is on the nose of the bait. On the Krej, that line tie is on the tip of the bill. The tip of the bill, not the nose of the bait. And that's really important to how this bait moves as well. Great size, great colors. Krej is available in a lot of those stunner colors that you've already fell in love with. Solids, translucents, great mix of different colors. But the key to this bait is how it moves. And the Krej moves totally different and unique, different than a jerkbait, different than a crankbait, different than a topwater. And let's talk about what that weight and that lip does to this bait. All right, the first thing is the Krej is a sinking jerkbait. Regular suspending jerkbait, they have their time and place. Regular suspending jerkbait, they're suspending or slow floating. You have to work that bait to use the bill to get it to dive to the depth that you want, right? The small stunner, small lip stunner, 4 or 5 feet. The deeper lip stunner, 6, 7 feet, 8 feet on a good day. And that's it. The Crudge is a sinking jerkbait. Think about it like a countdown, a sinking jerkbait. The Crudge sinks approximately 1 foot per second, makes it real easy to put this bait where you want it. All right? Think about that. You're fishing, and on that day you're fishing, you see the fish suspended. The fish are suspended at 12 feet of water, over 20. They're chasing bait. They're sitting over top of deep brush piles. And traditionally, dude, we'd have to work our butts off to get that suspending jerkbait down there. Make the longest cast you can make, reel the heck out of it, and hope that you can sort of get near 12 foot. You would never even hit 12 foot. But the Crudge sinks 1 foot per second. So when we cast this bait out there, we can literally count it down to the fish, okay? Think about the implications of that using forward-facing sonar. There's no more hoping the fish will rise to the bait. This bait is going to get to the fish, and you control it. You control how deep that Crudge goes because it's a sinking bait, okay? But let's get back to it, guys. Remember what I said about that dual weighting system? It doesn't just sink. It doesn't just sink like a rock that you throw in the water. The way that this bait is designed, you ready for this? This is the moment, guys. Watch this. It shimmies on the fall like a soft stick bait, and it falls backwards. It glides backwards, right? So a lot of weighted baits, when you throw them out there, they sink like a rock. Vroom. No. The Crudge sinks 1 foot per second, and it shimmies like a soft stick bait, like a General, like a Senko, like a Yumdinger. It shimmies backwards as it falls. It almost glides backwards as it falls. Think about that one, okay? Think about that one. Amazing prospects to a bait that shimmies and glides backwards like this. The first one is, think about this bait on a fish that you see on forward-facing sonar. You see that fish. You count it down to the fish. As you get to the fish, you work the bait. We're going to get to that in a second. You work the bait, and you see the fish following on forward-facing sonar. Look, that lip is facing up, so guess what that bait's doing? It's rising. Fish on forward-facing sonar, they love to feed up. If you've used forward-facing sonar, if you're an ice fisherman, you know that your bites are happening on the rise. Dude, this bait rises by itself. So you count it down to the fish, you work it, it starts to rise away from them. As you see that fish approaching, you kill the bait, lean to it, bow to the bait, throw slack into it, and guess what it does? Shimmies backwards right into the fish's face! Dude, that's a killer movement. If you fish big swim baits, big glide baits, you know what happens when you make that bait do a 180 and look at the fish. If you fish tail-weighted soft plastics, you know what happens when that soft plastic goes back into the fish's face. Now we're going to be able to do it with a hard bait. This Crudge is going to allow us to get to the level of the fish, to rise away from the fish, and then to shimmy back in his face. Pretty amazing that those guys in Spirit Lake were able to figure that out, but it glides backwards and shimmies on the fall. All right, let's skip to where I talked about that rising part. And that's really now where that lip comes into play. Because instead of down facing, regular jerkbait, the bait is diving. Now the lip is up facing, it's a backwards jerkbait lip. So now the bait's rising. So it really gives us the ability to hit a lot of different depth zones because we can make it rise or let it fall, okay? Make it rise or let it fall. That bill, if you look at it, it's pretty broad and super flat, and then we've got that perpendicular line tie. And those two things help that bait rise as we retrieve the bait, okay? Now I want to get into, knowing those two things, I want to get into the different ways that you can fish this bait. And this one surprised me, guys, because when I first got this and it showed up and I'm looking at it, there were things I could understand just by looking at it. But when I fished with this bait on the water for the first time, I was surprised at all the different applications that we can use this bait for, okay? So I'm gonna give you like 3 or 4, but man, this is a new bait. This is a new technique. So sky's the limit. You're gonna hear a lot more about this bait with techniques that I haven't even tried yet, okay? But let's talk about some of the ones that I've discovered. First one is getting this bait to get underneath of cover. If you're an old guy like me, you might remember being, you had insomnia at 1 o'clock in the morning and you remember an old lure called the flying lure. And the concept of that flying lure was that it would fly under stuff. Well, that was a little far-fetched, but the Crudge, because it shakes and glides backwards, is great when you're fishing around cover where you're trying to get underneath of it. So, give you some examples. Fishing the Crudge around boat docks. Fishing the Crudge around undercut banks. Fishing the Crudge around weed edges, deep and shallow weed edges. Anytime you want to get that bait back under stuff a little bit. Traditionally, that was reserved for soft baits. But now we can use that same technique with a hard jerkbait style lure, and it is incredible. Like literally fish that have lived under a dock that have never seen a jerkbait go underneath the dock, the Crudge will do it, okay? So technique number 1, allowing that bait with its design to get back under cover. Technique number 2, it is a phenomenal jerkbait, but a little different than your traditional suspending jerkbait like the Stunna. Traditional suspending jerkbait has a very inline, almost guaranteed movement, right? So, regular suspending jerkbait, I can twitch it and I can make it go left, right, but it stays in that little path pretty much the whole time. The difference with this bait is that when I fish the Crudge like a jerkbait and I'm jerking it, and you could use little rod twitches to make it small, you could use big hard twitches to make it wider, but the thing the Crudge does because of that bill facing up is it wanders more left to right. And not only does it wander more, but it wanders erratically, right? There's no rhythm to it. So, traditional suspending jerkbait, ding, 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 very, very static. But the Crudge, when I'm twitching this one, ding, 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 ding. And that erratic nature, when I'm fishing this as a jerkbait, creates reaction strikes. The best way I can describe that one is like when you're fishing a crankbait or a chatterbait or a spinnerbait, and you throw that bait out there and you hit something and the bait changes direction. That's when you get the bite. Well, this bait, it's going to do that by itself. Just by twitching it, Every once in a while, you're going to get this bait to step a little wider, a little off step, left or right. That erratic rhythm. And it's perfect for fish that aren't near cover. Once again, think about forward-facing sonar, guys. A lot of fish that you're seeing on that unit, be honest with me, they're not near anything. They're not sitting on a brush pile. They're not on a rock. They're just out in open water, for crying out loud. Now, we can make that thing move erratically just by jerking it, okay? So number 2 with the Krej, using it like a traditional jerkbait. Remember though, unlike a traditional jerkbait, when I pause that one, it just sits there. When I pause the Krej after I'm jerking it, shakes backwards right in his face. And that's awesome. All right. Technique number 3, one that really surprised me, guys, and so effective, especially for more wary, heavily pressured bass. A lot of times I'm talking about cold fronts or ultra clean water, or a million dudes out there. Everybody's throwing the same stuff. I love the Krej fished like a crankbait. And literally just throwing it out and reeling it. Throwing that Krej out there and not jerking it like we just talked about, but literally just reeling it in like a crankbait. The best way I can describe the movement of this is it's a very tight, subtle, swimming left to right body roll. That's a great way to describe it. When I just reel the Krej, I'm getting a very sort of tight left to right body roll. So like a crankbait, but different. Like a crankbait, but even more subtle. And it's a killer movement in the water when you see it. Once again, remember, because of that backwards lip, right? The Krej has an inverted lip. When I'm reeling that bait, it's rising to the top. If you're a crankbait fisherman, think about that for a second. I was trying to find a crankbait. If you're a crankbait fisherman, think about that for a second. A lot of your bites on a crankbait come when the crankbait hits off of something, or how many times have you reeled that crankbait in and your bites are coming as the crankbait gets close to the boat? Why do you think that is? Because a regular crankbait, when it gets close to the boat, it starts rising because the pull point changes. Boom, your bites are all coming as the bait comes up. Guess what? When I reel the Krej just like a crankbait, it's rising the whole time. Dude, fish cannot stand a bait trying to get away from them, trying to go to the surface away from them. And it's a movement, an up movement that draws fish to the bait, and they literally want to pin it to the surface, is the good way to describe it. So the Krej just cranked in like a crankbait, rising. Remember, it's weighted. So if I'm rising it up, a lot of times I want it to get back down to a depth zone, I just pause it. I kill it. I bow to it. When I do that, it stops and shimmies backwards. So if fish is following it, or I want it to get back down deeper, I just simply stop the retrieve. All right, last but not least on retrieves, and then we're going to talk about tackle just real quick. Last but not least on retrieves, this is another one that when this thing showed up, I was shocked. I was surprised, is using the Krej as a surface or subsurface lure. All right, I know what you're thinking. Mike, you just told me the thing sinks. What are you talking about? It is amazing fished just under the surface or walking on the top. And the way that lip is built, again, look at it. Super broad, super flat. Got an angle, an upward angle to it. And that line tie, perpendicular, to the nose of the lip, not the bait. Because of those things, this thing will stay near the surface if you want it there, okay? And a lot of times what I like to do with this thing is literally walk it on the surface like a walking bait, like a drift walker or a spook or whatever stick bait you're using, right? I jerk it on the top and it walks just like a stick bait, just like a spook. It walks just like a drift walker. But then I kill it. And when I kill it, guess what it does? Falls back, glides back. Imagine how many of those topwater fish that you've had over the years where you're walking your spook, boom, they blow up on it and miss it. And you're handicapped. You just sit there like, what? You can't do anything. You start your retrieve back up, they never bite again. What if you were walking that bait on the surface, boom, the fish missed it, and you kill it, bow to it, and it sinks back at the fish's face? How natural that is, that fish injured that bait fish trying to get away, and now it's an easy meal. Think about that if you're a topwater angler, okay? So as a topwater bait, killing it, letting it fall in the fish's face, and as a subsurface bait, I can get this thing to walk like a stick bait or walk like a jerk bait, just inches under the surface, and I can keep it there. Even though it's a sinking bait, I can keep it there because that bait wants to rise, okay? So the last technique is the Crudge as a topwater or subsurface bait. All right, last but not least, let's get into tackle. And guys, I've experimented a little bit with tackle. By no means is this the only way, a rod, reel, line you can fish this with, but these are the ways that I've had success with. And the best way to tell you is fish the Crudge on the same exact rod that you're already using for your suspending jerk baits or topwaters, right? That's the kind of rod and reel that bait excels at because of a lot of the movements that we're making. So in general, 6.5 to 7 foot medium action rod is what you want. This is the 6.8 Ike Series Abu rod, and it's a delay rod, so it's very parabolic. It's got a medium action. It's a softer tip rod, and it really allows me to throw that bait a mile, work the bait. When I hook them, because it's got treble hooks like a jerk bait, the rod's got a lot of give to it. I land a lot of fish. So 6.5 to 7 foot medium action casting rod. On the gear ratio of the reel, I'm not even going to give you a specific. Medium fast to fast is a good way to describe it. I've been fishing it on a 8-to-1 reel. I fished it on a 6-to-1. I fished it on a lot of different ratios. If it's medium fast, let's call it 6.6 to 8.1, you're in good shape. All right, last but not least, guys, is line. And about 80% of the time, I'm fishing the Crudge on straight fluorocarbon line. And the reason for that is, remember, this bait really is all about action. Whether I'm letting it sink, whether I'm jerking it or cranking it, it's all about that action, right? So fluorocarbon allows this bait to move like no other, right? So fluorocarbon is helping the action. So I like 8 to 15 pound Berkley Trilene 100% fluorocarbon. 10 or 12 pound tests is a great line size. That's what I'm fishing most of the time. 80% of the time, straight fluorocarbon. But then 20% of the time, switch to mono. And guess when I'm going to switch to mono? When I want to keep the Crudge on the surface, okay? So when I'm purposely walking the bait as a topwater or fishing it as a wake bait, those 20% of those situations, I switch to monofilament. 10 to 15 or 17 pound mono. I love that Berkley Trilene Sensation. Berkley Sensation's a great line. I like the 14-pound size. It's great size. And mono floats, so mono helps to keep this bait high if that's how you're trying to fish it. Guys, I'll be honest, I haven't been this excited about a new bait, and even better than that, a new style of fishing in a really long time. Coming from a guy that's old and needs help with forward-facing sonar, this is going to be an amazing tool to help me catch those fish looking at that graph. I hope you enjoyed this shop, talking about the brand new Berkley Krej. It's going to be a game changer. I know you've heard me say it before, but this one really is. Give it a look. It's going to change the way you fish, especially for fish out off the bank. Man, I hope you like these shops. If you like what you're hearing, do me a favor. Stop right now. Hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to my channel. If you're already subscribed, tell your fishing friends about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We got a new video dropping every single week. Try that. Crudge, I bet you're going to get your arm ripped off. Bye, guys. Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli. I hope you enjoyed this week's In the Shop. I hope you learned a little bit. And if you like these videos, remember, there's a whole boatload. Check out these two, and you're going to learn more about bass fishing.